everyone, my name is Allie and welcome to my channel. So today I thought that I would talk about something that I like to do when I read, and that is listening to music. So I find this to be a really interesting topic when talking about kind of our bookish habits and like reading habits, because I have noticed that not everyone listens to music when they read. Which probably seems really obvious that like not everyone would do that, but for me it just seems like it would be the most enjoyable thing to do when reading. But for some people it seems like they like to have it either very quiet or maybe have like ambient noise or just the noise of like the world around them. But for me personally, I really like to listen to music. So I don't really know when this whole like listening to music when reading thing started, but I do remember when listening to music and writing started. And I think that was probably around like 6th or 7th grade, so I was maybe like 11 or 12. And that was when I really started to write a lot more than I had in the past. And I don't know, it just seemed like for me, like my creativity was sparked a lot more when I was listening to music. It didn't really matter what kind of music it was, it just had to be music in general. And I do remember even before that, that music really helped me to get through my homework and to do it right and to just, you know, be motivated to do it. So I think that that's also where it started. And I also know that there are people that like to listen to maybe classical music when they read or any other certain kind of genre when they read, and it doesn't have to be like just like random music. And for me, I like to listen to music that kind of fits with the theme of the book. So for example, when I was reading Labyrinth Lost by Zoraida Cordova, I was listening to Vance Joy's newest album. And that album and just kind of like the mood of the sound of that album was just really, really perfect for this book. And now whenever I listen to that album, it reminds me of this book. Another example is And I Darken by Kiersten White, and I listened to Reputation by Taylor Swift when I was reading this entire series. So for some reason, the mood of that album just fit this series so perfectly. I think it just has to do with kind of like the overall theme of what Reputation is about, and it just kind of like fit perfectly with this series. And for me, that really elevated like my experience when reading this specific book because it just fits so perfectly, and Reputation just seems to be like the perfect sort of soundtrack for this book. And I think that's something really important to note, is that when I listen to music when I'm reading, it's kind of like a soundtrack for me, like a soundtrack to a movie, and it just kind of helps to elevate the storytelling and really get me immersed into whatever's going on in the story. Another example is when I listened to Red by Taylor Swift when I was reading Everything Leads to You by Nina LaCour. So as you can see, I do like to kind of dedicate a singular album to certain books, but then there are other books that I read where it's kind of like the certain genre of that book is tied to a certain genre of music. So when I was first reading the Divergent series by Veronica Roth, I was also listening to a lot of Paramore, just like a lot of alternative rock kind of music. So anything like Paramore, 3 Days Grace, anything like that, you know, Linkin Park, that's kind of what I listen to when I read dystopian. And then when I'm reading more contemporary books, I do like to stick with any Taylor Swift album, and it's kind of nice because she does have kind of like a mix of albums to choose from. So she does have some country stuff and some pop stuff and some kind of like Reputation's like a little more darker pop. So that is really helpful to figure out what album to choose when I'm listening to Taylor Swift and reading a contemporary book. But for some contemporary books, I do have to like kind of switch it up a little bit, but I do like to stick with like a pop sound for contemporary. And it's really funny because when I normally read fantasy, I kind of tend to stick to anything that's kind of like composed, like a movie score or something like that. But recently I've kind of been getting into listening to like London Grammar when reading fantasy, or even Lissy when reading fantasy. So that's kind of interesting, and I love London Grammar. That's definitely a group that I gravitate towards whenever I'm reading just about any genre. But for right now, it's definitely very fantasy oriented, and it's working really, really well. Like their music is just such perfect background for any sort of reading situation, especially fantasy, and especially kind of like a darker fantasy. And sometimes I get really, really frustrated because I'm trying to like figure out what to listen to when reading a specific book, and it just like kind of like takes me out of the enjoyment of reading when I can't figure out what to listen to when I'm reading a specific book. Like it was really hard for me to read Leah on the Offbeat by Becky Albertalli because I couldn't really listen to Taylor Swift when I was reading it, because I just didn't feel like that was the vibe that Leah would go for. So I kind of had to like play around with different things and like try to listen to just random pop music and like it was hard. A lot of the time when I was reading that book, I wasn't listening to music, and that was like really rough. So, you know, sometimes I just have to kind of power through a book without music, but I do tend to listen to music when I'm reading books, and I tend to enjoy those a little bit more than when I can't really find something to listen to. And also for things like sci-fi, I tend to listen to Star Wars scores. Anything by John Williams is really helpful. And when I'm reading something that's more historical fiction, I tend to go for like the Little Women score or the Anna Karenina score, anything like that. Even the Pride and Prejudice score is really good. And also something I really appreciate when I'm listening to an audiobook, and this is kind of what happened when I was listening to Leia, Princess of Alderaan by Claudia Gray, is that that specific audiobook did actually have some of the Star Wars music in that audiobook, and it was like perfection. It was literally one of my favorite audiobooks to listen to. And even if you're like not super into Star Wars or you don't know a lot about it, I so recommend listening to Leia, Princess of Alderaan, because that audiobook is actually incredible, and it does have a score behind it and has a lot of like sound effects and stuff like that, and I found that to be such an incredibly enjoyable listening and reading experience, and it was just, it blew my mind. It was amazing. Once I heard that it had like the score and sound effects in it, I knew I had to read it, and I like do not regret that choice at all. It was incredible. It was amazing. So yeah, I hope that I adequately explained why I love listening to music when reading. It's just something that is so enjoyable to me and that really immerses me into the story, and it just kind of feels like I'm watching a movie instead of just reading a book and like flipping pages and stuff. It really gets me into like the mind space of the story, so I can really just like get in there and dig deep, and it really does just heighten the enjoyment for me for some reason. It's just something that I love. So let me know down in the comments if you like to listen to music as well, and what kind of music you like to listen to. But if you don't like listening to music when reading, let me know also down in the comments, and like kind of explain why you like it, why you don't like it, and I think that'd be really interesting to hear. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. I make new videos every Sunday and Wednesday. Also go follow all of my social media links. That's Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, my blog is also down there. That's all linked down below, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!